Welcome to r/ProRevenge. Here are 3 more stories of vengeance. If you like this content, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. Let's do this thing. Story number 1. Renee, once the job's done, prepare for your just desserts. A few years after I started my business, I was asked to clean up and optimize a number of PCs in multiple locations, as well as set up some forms and templates for a new client who owned a local restaurant. The work, all labor apart from a little travel, was performed over the space of a month due to scheduling conflicts and school holidays. But, on completing the last of it, the client confirmed verbally that he was happy with all I'd done and to go ahead and send an invoice. I duly emailed an invoice for a sum just in excess of £400. I waited for payment, never heard anything, sent reminder emails, called and left messages, but no response. Eventually a couple of busy months had passed, and I met the client by chance in the local supermarket. On asking why he'd not paid or been in touch, he said that all the PCs were as bad as they had been before I'd started, and that he had tried to contact me with no success, as my landline and mobile phone had caller display as well as answering services, and there had been no emails. I knew the latter was BS. And as any PC user knows, a system can easily go back to pot if the user's bad habits don't change. So, I contacted a local debt collector, gave him the details, printouts of my call logs and post-invoicing emails, and he took them to the restaurateur. On his return his words were, he's not disputing the invoice, he's saying that the work wasn't done right, so it's his word against yours. I queried if it was worth taking the guy to small claims. To which the debt collector said, even if you could prove he confirmed he was satisfied with the work, they might insist you get his computers back to their pre-invoice state again. Do you really want to spend more time doing that? Of course, the answer was no, so I stewed it over in my mind and came up with a plan. At this point it was late November, so, creating 2 throwaway email accounts in female names, I got in touch with the restaurant to book a large party for Valentine's night the following February. I put it down as my husband's surprise 40th birthday party and confirmed that my husband's sister, and CC'd her in the message with the other throwaway, couldn't make the journey north, but would happily pay the £10 per head deposit as her share towards the night. Of course, as time went on the ideas grew arms and legs. The numbers attending increased until the owner suggested he'd reserve the whole restaurant for the evening and they'd happily arrange the seating to suit us. But could I ensure the deposit was sorted as soon as possible, please? Of course, I confirmed that the sister was a scatterbrain and that I'd ensure the check was with him very soon. He emailed the sister using the CC address and she confirmed it had been posted. To keep him on side, I asked for a proposed menu in advance so that I could send it to all the attendees for pre-ordering. Naturally they were delighted that they'd know this, as it makes their life much easier. Consequently, the numbers for all 3 courses were emailed in, with a few fussy eater variables thrown in for good measure. Needless to say, by the beginning of February he was getting quite antsy about there being no sign of the deposit, but I reassured him that the sister's check must have been lost in the post, so she'd send another by special delivery if they could ensure someone was there to sign for it. I knew the owner lived about 25 miles away, and the restaurant didn't open till 5 PM. So he'd have to come in very early and hang around waiting for it. A week before D-Day and he'd obviously had enough. He emailed in a spat saying they'd turned away numerous inquiries, had no deposit, and could no longer hold back on taking other bookings. This time I didn't bother applying. My part was done. My wife, at the time, and I were booked in at another restaurant close by for our own Valentine's meal, after which we took a walk past the restaurateur's business premises to see just 2 cars in their parking lot, one of which was his. I'm not sure how much he must have lost out on that night, but knowing his prices I'd bet it was significantly more than the £400+ I'd invoiced him. Of course, lessons were learned by me too. Get written or emailed confirmation of job satisfaction for one, and not letting new clients go unbilled for too long was another. Naturally, I had no hesitation letting all and sundry know how he'd behaved either, so he was blacklisted or forced to pay up front for any work by IT and other professionals I knew locally. Story number 2. You are a snitch. Your car will not move. To explain how we were able to get this done, you need to know that it happened in a high mountain valley in the Swiss Alps. In the late 1980s I attended an international boarding school in Switzerland. This school is among the best schools in the German-speaking countries. We were a closely knit community and helped each other whenever it was possible. There were of course some people who acted against many of the unspoken rules we had. The most important rule was that we didn't snitch when a harmless prank was pulled. One day we connected a flip-flop circuit to the lights of the physics classroom. When the teacher came in and switched on the lights, we had flashing lights in the whole room. What we didn't consider was that light bulbs aren't built to resist this strain, and it took only about 30 seconds for the bulbs to stop working. The teacher was amused about this prank though, and had a good laugh. The headmaster wasn't amused at all though when he learned about this prank. He demanded the names of those who were responsible for it. One classmate didn't hesitate to give the names to the headmaster. To say that the rest of us were royally pissed would be an understatement. The headmaster decided that we had to serve detention and repair the lights. No big deal normally, since we already decided to change the bulbs and disconnect the circuit. But the snitch in his entitled way said that it would serve us right. Now that broke the camel's back, and after detention was served, we sat together and discussed about how to teach the traitor a lesson. Since it was winter and temperatures dropped far below freezing, I had a great idea. The traitor was one of the students who went home every weekend. He had his car parked close to a small river that ran through the whole valley. I knew that one classmate, who didn't live in school, but in the village where the school is located, had a pump. I told them that we should cover the traitor's car with a thick layer of ice. Everyone else agreed to this, and we covered the car with a nearly 2-inch thick layer of ice by spraying water from the river over the car with the pump. The car looked like a piece of art when we finished our revenge. On Saturday the guy went to his car after the last period on the day and we all went outside to witness his reaction. It was priceless to see that he was devastated by the way his car looked. He couldn't even open the doors because the locks were covered with ice. His trip home was cancelled that weekend. He never snitched on us ever again. Before we did it, we covered every part that might get damaged with duct tape to keep the water out. Story number 3. Fired from last job, but I got the last laugh. Pardon the format, I'm on mobile. I worked at a retail chain that sold pet supplies and products. When I started working there it was great, family owned, and everyone I worked with was fantastic. The owners eventually wanted to retire and sold the small chain to an investment group. Once the investment group took over, almost all but a few employees were let go, forced out, or just quit. I hung on for a little while longer before I got promoted at my other job. New company brings in new manager to my store. My store was the top performing store in the entire chain, bringing in about $10,000 to $12,000 per day on average. It was always more on weekends, and especially around the holidays. The new manager is a Mr. Company man. Company told him they only want employees around for 2 to 3 years. Me and 2 others had been there 10 plus years. So naturally he began ruffling feathers and giving us all a hard time. Unfortunately, he decided on me first. Mr. Company man found out I worked 2 jobs. The 2 jobs are not in related fields, so there was no chance of any conflicts of interest on my end. However, my second job requires me to work nights and weekends. When Mr. Company man found this out, he demanded I work nights/weekends there, so it was fair for everyone. I didn't work nights and weekends there because I was that store's only OSHA certified forklift operator, and deliveries didn't come at night. They came weekday mornings, every day. Mr. Company man didn't want to hear that and told me I either had to work nights and weekends or that day would be my last day. I told him, don't threaten me with a good time. I suppose today is my last day then. I was pretty pissed about that, but it's not a big deal now. Ended up being the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I went home early, didn't finish my shift because frick them. But when I got home, I decided to call my local OSHA inspector and report them for not having a certified operator on staff, as well as numerous other hazards. Needless to say, they lost close to 3 weeks profit from all the violations the inspector found. I was surprised they even showed up. In my state, the inspector will call you back after an inspection and tell you if your claims were founded or not. Mine were. And Mr. Company Man got his ass chewed out so bad he ended up quitting. Edit. To add a bit more, after I was fired it really motivated me to get my behind in gear and get back in school. Working as a stationary engineer now. Edit 2. My state does not have a forklift license. It's really called a powerlift operator's license. The license needs to be renewed every 4 years. There are 7 classes of powerlift here. I was certified in 1 through 6. Class 7 being any lift equipped with pneumatic tires, which I would never have needed to use because ours was a class 5. There is no federal regulation, standard or language that requires certification to my best knowledge, but my AHJs, authority having jurisdiction, are allowed to make regulations and standards that are more stringent than federal ones. These standards and regulations are typically enforced by my local Department of Labor office or OSHA office. Thanks for listening.